Yeah, and this really is a great process too, because one of the things I haven't experimented with much lately, or Hi there and welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. Today I'm going to take you on a little bit of a ride and show you a new process that I haven't showed you before, and I've been talking about it for a little while on my Patreon and otherwise, and I've been promising to get to it, and I'm finally getting to it. I'm going to show you how to do some salt printing. Now salt printing, salted paper printing, was invented by Fox Talbot back in, I think it's like 1830s, 1839 I think is when they finally used sodium thiosulfate as a fixative, allowing him to permanently fix the photographic image in place, which basically started everything with photographic prints. And I think that the salted printing process was the predominant photographic print method up until perhaps the 1860s or something like that, when they started to use different types of papers and things like that. More papers created, silver, I believe silver iodide papers that were develop out process papers rather than printing out process papers, which is what salted paper printing process is. So I'll get to that in a little bit. Basically, a printout POP, or a printing out process, is a process that develops itself as it's going along. So one of the cool things about that is while you're printing it, you can open up the back of your print frame if you're using a split frame printer like this, where you can open up half of it at one time. You can actually look at the print while you're printing it, and you can see if your exposure is correct, and you can develop by inspection, that kind of thing. You can print by inspection, unlike other things where you have to kind of guess at your exposure and then you hone in on your exposure. You can actually see your exposure as it's happening with this process, so that's a lot of fun. Now, the way the process is done is I'm using, for this one, I'm not going to take you through mixing all the chemistry and things like that. Bostic & Sullivan has a really great little kit, a salted paper printing kit that you can get for, it's cheap, it's 35 bucks, something like that. You can order it from them, and it comes with a salted paper sensitizer. And basically the sensitizer is a salted solution, and it has sodium chloride, sodium citrate, ammonium chloride mixed in there. And what it does, it's not light sensitive in itself, but mixed with the other solution, which is a 12% silver nitrate, it becomes light sensitive. Now, unlike platinum and palladium, which you can see in a series of videos that I've already created, and they should be up here right now, this process, you don't mix the two ahead of time. Like in palladium and platinum processes, you mix the ferric oxalate and the palladium together before you put it on the paper. In this process, you actually take your paper and you coat it with the paper sensitizer first. And you coat your paper, and then you dry it out, and then once it's dry, you then take the 12% silver nitrate solution and you brush it on top of it. And then the mixture of the two creates a silver chloride, and then it is light sensitive. And then you can mix it together. Then you can sandwich it together with your negative and put it into a contact printing frame and put it into the light burner back here, a UV light source, or it's more fun to even take it out in the sunlight, because in a printing out process like this, you don't have to guess at what your exposure is going to be, or you don't have to process out and figure out your exposure. You can just keep opening up the back and having a look at the print and seeing where it is in the sunlight. So if you've got a nice sunny day, who needs a print burner? You know, you can just go out there in the sun and make this process. It's a really fun process, and I highly advise you giving it a try, simply because it's so cheap. I know I've been taking you on this journey with platinum and palladium through a series of things, but whereas this size jar in platinum and palladium is $200, you know, this is silver nitrate solution, and you know, 15, 20 bucks kind of thing, you know, and you can make a lot of prints with the solution that you get in the kit from Bostic & Sullivan. Now again, I'm thinking on doing a subsequent set of videos on salt printing that will take you through some of the finer points of it, because there is a lot that can be done with it. There's different toners that you can use. You can use palladium toners, you can use gold chloride toners, you can even use selenium in it. And what that helps with is it sort of replaces the silver chloride that's silver chloride that's on the paper with the more noble metal, or the more precious metal, and a longer lasting thing. So, you know, whereas these will last quite a while, in full sun they'll fade a little bit, that kind of thing, but if you've toned them, they're as permanent as they're going to be. Now, I'm not going to get into toning in this video as well, but you can, gold chloride 1%, you can tone that way. There's ways to look this up, and I will show it in subsequent videos again. But for today, I'm just going to take you through a simple salt print, and there's really not that much to it. Now, what you're going to need for this process is, I like to have a shot glass just to pour my drops into before I pour it on the paper, but that's not necessary. I mean, you can use an eyedropper and take it out of your bottles and drop it on your paper if you know how much solution you need. Now, so you're going to need the kit, or you're going to need, you're going to need the kit from Bostic & Sullivan. You're going to need some eyedroppers, of course. In the kit from Bostic & Sullivan, it comes with its own fixer. It's a little bottle of sodium thiosulfate pentahydrate. And you'll mix this up at, I believe it's a 10% solution that we'll be fixing the paper in after we've made our exposure. Now, again, we don't have to develop this. But what we do have to do is, once the print is made, we put it into a bath of water, and we change that bath out a couple of times, because what happens is the unused silver in the process needs to get washed out before you fix it. I mean, the fixing will help do that, but it's better to do it beforehand, and it gives you a nice smoother print if you do it that way. So what we're going to be doing after we make the print is we're going to be soaking it in some water and changing that water out a couple of times before we put it into a bath of sodium thiosulfate as a fixer. So again, you're going to need the kit. I'll have a link down below where you can buy the kit from Bostic & Sullivan. That way you can get going easy on your own. I mean, the chemistry that you need isn't all that much, but it's much more simple to find out if you're going to like this process by just buying the kit from Bostic & Sullivan. And you're going to need some paper. And now the paper that I like to use is Hahnemuhl's HPR, Hahnemuhl's platinum rag paper. It's really great paper all across the alternative processing spectrum. So I like to have that, and I like to have it humidified about 45–50%, that kind of thing. We're up here in the woods of northern Michigan right now, and it's pretty humid, and I actually run a dehumidifier in here to keep things down around 50%. So, you know, you can feel the paper has a little bit of moisture to it, but it's not wet, if you know what I mean. Now, what that helps with is it helps with your Dmax, just like it does with the platinum and palladium process. But it also it helps with just your coating, and it helps by having the paper somewhat wet ahead of time, and that way it doesn't absorb all of your solution. Most of your solution will lay on the surface and gradually soak in rather than being absorbed into a dry piece of paper. So it's nice to have your paper humidified ahead of time. I've got a couple of sheets of 8x10 Hahnemuhl Platinum Rag here, and again, I'd like to thank Hahnemuhl because they sponsor me, and it's very nice to have them giving me these products to show you how to do these processes. Now, again, there'll be a link to Hahnemuhl down below as well. Now, we've got all that ahead of time. We're going to need a brush, and I like to use a Richardson brush just like I do with platinum and palladium. Richardson, I believe it's a 9021 or a 9041. I'll put a link down to that. There are always links down below in showing you what I use in these different videos. So I like to have a Richardson. This one I've already pre-wetted and kind of shook out and used on a piece of paper towel. So this one's ready to go once I put my solution on the paper. It's good to have some glasses, and I'm going to put those on right now. Now, safety glasses, because we are using silver nitrate, and silver nitrate can be damaging to your eyes if you happen to get it in there. In this process, it's not splashing around, and it's not going to get around anywhere, but it's good just to have the glasses for safety. And also, silver nitrate does stain. So once it hits UV light, it starts to stain. So if you get it on your fingers, or if you get it on your clothing or anything, it's going to stain when you hit light. So if you are adverse to having your hands get a little dark on your fingertips and things like that, I would use some nitrile gloves. I'm not using the nitrile gloves at this point because I'm pretty careful using it, and I'm not going to get any on me. Now, if you do get any on you and you notice it, rinse it off real quick in some water and wash it. Not because it will hurt you in any way, but because it will stop it from being there when you walk out into the sunlight. Because if you walk out in the sunlight with silver nitrate in your hands, they're going to turn dark right away, and it'll be there for a good week or so. Anyway, and then you're going to need a, let's see, what else have we got here? You're going to need, of course, a contact printing frame. And I like to use a split printing frame like this, because what I like to do is when the print is in there, and it's exposing, I can open it up and I can peel back the paper and I can look at the print and see where the exposure is before I close it back up. And that way, because it's still held down on this side, it doesn't move the negative, and the negative stays in registration. I'll show you that as we're printing in a little while here. So anyway, you're going to need a print frame. I'm going to put that back up here out of the way for a minute. You are going to need a negative, of course. Now, this is a UV process, so you're going to need a negative that's the size of the print that you're making. You're not going to be exposing this from an enlarger and blowing up a print. You're going to be needing a negative that is the size of the print that you want, your final print. So this is a negative that I've taken. It was shot a long time ago. It's of some tulips that we're going to use. And matter of fact, I've got the print here, and this will give you an idea of what a salt print looks like. Now, they're very beautiful. It's got quite a long exposure scale, much like platinum and palladium, not quite as wide, but it's very delicate. Now, the blacks are never really quite black, and it tends to have this kind of like warm orangish cast depending on how you process it. But it's kind of an acquired taste, but they're very beautiful. I'm looking into it closely right now, and it's just the detail in them is incredible, and as well as the tonal variation in them. They're quite spectacular. And if you want to see one of these prints before you've done it yourself, I'm going to make a few of these, and just like I do with the digital negative series, there's a link down below where you can purchase one of these prints for yourself. Give me a few days to send it to you when you order it, but you'll be able to have it and hold it in your hand and see what it is that you're looking to make. And it's a nice guide print to use, and it kind of shows you, what can be done with them. I'm not saying I'm the best printer in the world or anything, but I do kind of produce a print that is pretty acceptable, and it will give you an idea of what it's like. So if you want to have one of these, you can look down below and you can order one, and I'll get it to you. Anyway, now another thing I want to do before I get into it a little further is I want to show you this book here. Now, the book here, Salted Paper Printing, this is kind of like a Bible with this process now, and it's produced by, or it was written by a friend of mine, Christina Anderson. And Christina, I've showed you her other books in the past. She's done them on photogravure. She's done them on the digital negative. She's done them on salted paper printing, gum printing, that kind of thing. And now she doesn't always write them herself. She'll contract somebody else, like Clay Harmon, a good friend of mine who is very well versed in the photogravure process. He's written the book on photogravure and on down the line, that kind of thing. But this is a very good book, and it's got a lot of imagery in here and a lot of imagery from different artists that practice the process, so you can see also there what can be done. This book is available, and I will have a link below as well, okay? So anyway, let me get that out of the way, and we're going to get on to this now. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set my one piece of paper aside here, and we are going to have to take this piece of paper and coat it with our salted paper sensitizer. Now again, this sensitizer has several chemicals in it, of which you'll see in a subsequent video, or you can see in Christina's book. It's basically ammonium chloride, ammonium citrate, sodium chloride. There's a little bit of gelatin in there. Gelatin's sort of sizing for the paper, so it helps when you put helps keep the paper even when you put the silver nitrate on there. But anyway, we're going to put a little bit of this on the paper first. Now, what I like to do is I basically coat the whole piece of paper when I'm doing this, because then I know at least where that all is. Now, when you put the silver nitrate on there, you really only have to put the silver nitrate in the area where your negative is going to go. But just so it's easy and it's inexpensive, and it's easy enough for me to just coat the whole sheet of paper at one time. So that's what we're going to do. Now, first, what I'm going to do is open up the salted paper sensitizer here and get my brush ready to go. And I'm going to take out a few drops here of the sensitizer. Now, normally I would count them out and I would know how many drops I'm going to have on here, but I kind of know that a full dropper full is going to cover this piece of paper for me. So I basically splash that out on the piece of paper and set this off to the side. Now I take the brush and very lightly, much like platinum and palladium, I start to move that puddle around on the piece of paper, and I make sure that I've coated the whole sheet. Now you can see on the other piece of camera here, the second camera, you can maybe see me moving the solution around on the piece of paper. Now see, and I'm even noticing that I've got a little bit less. Maybe the paper's not quite as humidified, so I'm going to even put another dropper on there. It's not a big deal. A little goes a long way, but it's good to make sure that you've covered everything completely. And then once you've got it all covered out, I like to, much like the platinum palladium process, I like to just drag it out with the brush's weight across there until I can see that I've got that piece of paper completely coated. And once again, I kind of go both ways on the paper, crossways and lengthways. But I always make sure to use the same side of my brush, okay? Now, while I've done that, I like to get it off to the side and get it drying. So I'll set down my brush, and I'm going to put this paper for right now over to the side. And what I'm going to do is, while I've got this going, I'm going to coat another piece of paper. So we'll have a couple of pieces of paper and prints to work on in this process video that I'm showing you. Now once again, I'm going to take out the salted paper sensitizer, and I am going to use 2 dollops on there like I did last time. And I don't need to redo my brush at this point or wash it out because it's such a, I'm so close behind the first one. Now once again, I'm brushing this on the paper, using the same side of the brush, making sure that I've got the whole sheet covered. And then I go back the other way. And I can see now that I'm getting a real nice even coat. I'm going to go one more time, feather it out, the weight of the brush. And there we go. Now I've got both sheets covered. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set them off to the side, and I'm going to hang them up on the on my line here to dry. And I'll take the other one and I'll put it on the line to dry. Okay, we've got that ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to rinse out the brush very well, and I'll come back here, and then when I'm ready to go with the next part, when the paper is dry, I'll come back here, and we are going to coat the paper again with the silver nitrate before we put the negative on there and print it. So bear with me here, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so we've got the paper dry now, and one of the things I didn't mention is that you can use a blow dryer to dry your paper. Just try to use it on low heat or no heat at all. But again, I just kind of prefer to just hang them up on the line and let them dry themselves. Anyway, so we've got both of these here. We're going to coat both of them at the same time. I'm going to put one aside for right now. I've rinsed out my brush, and I've got it shaken out and dabbed out a little bit, so the brush is moist and ready to go. I've got that ready to go. I've got my negative ready to go. Let's pull this out of the way here and move this over this way a little bit so we can see easier what I'm doing. Now what I want to do is I want to take a pencil. One of the things I didn't do before is tell you to have a pencil by hand. Now I've shown you this before in other videos, again, that you can see at another time, but this is how I mark my paper. I get the negative on the paper just kind of about where I want it, and I hold it down with one finger. Sometimes I do this on a light table so I can see through easier, but then I just kind of look and see where my corner is, and I peel back my negative, and I put a little X right there in that corner, and then I do the same thing over here, and I X off. Just put a little dot on that corner, you know, and then I put another dot here, in that corner, and on this one. So the reason I do that is now I can see where I can coat my silver nitrate. Now I could coat the whole piece again, but that's kind of sloppy, and I don't like to do that. Again, I've also showed you my negative that I use, and I've got it masked. And now I'll also show you up here, there's another link to my masking video and how I mask these negatives off. And I also mask off the paper when I'm printing sometimes. So anyway, we're all set to go. We've got our 4 dots here ready to rock. Negative ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the silver nitrate and I'm just going to have a much smaller area. So I'm just going to put 1 dollop of silver nitrate in there on the paper, and I'm going to take and I'm going to start brushing that puddle around and making sure that I cover the area around the dots that I've drawn so that I know that my negative is going to lay on top of a sensitized area with silver. Now I like to stay as close as I can. I'm kind of a neat freak when it comes to this stuff, so I tend to be very precise on my edges, and that's why I use the masking of my negatives, and you'll see what I mean once I get this print going. Okay, so there, I've got it nicely coated. Much like platinum and palladium, I feathered out with just the weight of the brush, and I'm going to set that one aside. Now, I'm going to bring in the other piece of paper, and I'm going to do the same thing. Take the silver nitrate, put one, oops, sorry, I did not make my corners here. So let's do that. Now, as I said before, I much prefer to do this on a light table because I get a little bit more exact, but this is good. So now, take the silver nitrate, 1 big dollop there. Take my brush, which is already coated with some silver nitrate, and I brush that puddle out, and I coat the area that I will be covering with the negative. Yeah, there we go, that's very nice. Now you probably can't see this on the video, but I can see the shine of where I'm putting the silver nitrate. And there we go. Now, there's another trick that I'd like to tell you about that, whereas you can use a drop of food coloring also on there with your silver nitrate, mix it into the shot glass. That's why I have the shot glass here. Mix just a little bit of food coloring in there, and that way you can see right where you're painting on your silver nitrate. The thing about that is that when you rinse the print later on, that food coloring comes out. So anyway, that's just another little tip so that you can see where you're coating your paper. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let these dry once again, and you can also dry these with a hair dryer like I said before, but you want to use low heat, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes to start making the print. Okay, so now the paper is dry and we have a coating of silver nitrate on here, and this paper is sensitized to UV light. Now I'm working here in the dim room right now. It's not going to affect the paper as far as fogging unless I left it out in here all day, that kind of a thing. So anyway, let's get down here. We're going to marry the negative with the sensitized piece of paper. So I look for my corners that I've marked and I match those up with the negative. Like that, and there, we're ready to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the print frame down here. We're going to open it up, and very carefully I am going to keep the negative in the same position, put it down, face down inside of the print frame so that obviously the light comes up from beneath. And then I am also leaving it kind of where the middle of the print is where the back splits like this, so that I can open it up and do my inspection of the printing process. Okay, so there we go. We've got it all set, all ready to go, and we're going to put it into the plate burner. Now, I know from previous experience that I am at 12 minutes in my burner. So we'll open that up, make sure everything's working in here, yes, and in it goes for a 12-minute run. Now, what will happen is I'm going to bring that out partially through. Actually, I'm just going to bring it out in a couple of minutes so you can see how fast this starts to act. But I will open up the back so that you can see what is what is happening as it's developing. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close up my silver nitrate. Now I like to keep the silver nitrate covered at all times. I'll set the eyedropper off to the side there, and I'll keep that covered up for right now. It's always good practice to keep that covered. It's actually good practice to keep all of your chemistry covered when you're not in use, when it's not in use. So I'm going to do that also with my sensitizer, because I don't want to have an accident and I don't want to have to make another order or mix up another bunch, that kind of thing. So we'll set that off to the side, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you after this short amount of time how much is already exposed on the paper. So let's pull that back out, and I'll put it over here where this other camera can see. I'll open up one side like this, and now watch what's going to happen. I'll peel this back, and you'll see the print already starting in there. See that? It's actually looking really nice already. So I'll open up the other side so you can see the other part of the print. I'll peel that back, and you can see the tulips up in there. It's looking like a very nice, evenly coated piece of paper as well. So let's close that back up again, and we'll stick it back in the plate burner. All right, now, just gonna have to bear with me for the next 10 minutes, and we'll pull this out for your final view. Okay, so we're just coming up on about halfway through our exposure, and I'm gonna pull it out again so that you can see where the exposure has progressed since the last time I showed you, which was only about, less than a minute into the printing. So you'll see how much it darkens. Now, another thing that I wanted to explain about this is in the printing out processes like these, they're also self-masking. And what that means is as certain areas of the print get darker, it gets harder for the light to get in and expose it even further, so they kind of mask themselves. So the shadow areas will slow down in their development while the highlighted areas are still developing, and they can develop in. So that's one of the cool things about inspecting by development, is that you can really push the print for what it can be made into because of that. After a certain point, you're not making the dark areas any darker. You're only making the lighter areas a little bit darker, and that's what self-masking is. So anyway, let's pull it out right now, and we'll see where we stand. Now, once again, I'm on this camera here. Let's see. Let's open this up and peel it back, and oh, there you go. See now how much more exposure there is. Now let's turn it around the other way. And oh yeah, look at that. That's very nice, very nice. I got a little bit of smuts down in there that seems to have come off the paper, but those are the things that happen when you're doing this. You can always spot things like that out afterward. That shouldn't have happened. It might have happened because I hadn't had the paper completely dry all the way. And I'm kind of rushing things for the video. So anyway, let's go back in. We'll cook it for the last 4 minutes here. And we'll see how it comes out. When we get it out of there, we'll take it over into the rinsing bath, and then we will be able to put it into the fixer. Now, another thing that I'll tell you about it is when you do put it into the rinsing bath, the water will get a little bit cloudy. You might not notice that on camera, but you'll notice that because that's what happens when the silver nitrate starts to run out and the silver nitrate mixes with water. It gets a little bit of cloudiness to it. So that way you can tell when you've got the print rinsed correctly. So what I like to do is drain the tray, put a little bit more water in, rinse it around, drain it a little bit more, and make sure that I've got all of the unused silver nitrate out of there. Because if you don't, very often when you get into the fixer, you'll start to get blotchiness to it and things like that. So kind of want to try to avoid that. So rinse it as good as possible, and I'll show you that here in a minute. We are now 3 minutes away from our final destination. Okay, the timer just clicked off, and While I was going through the rest of the print there, I forgot to mention that when we were done with the silver nitrate brush, you should wash this out. And I rinsed it out and it took care of everything, and I've got it all ready to go again. So now we're going to bring out the contact printing frame. We're going to open it up. We're going to take our print out. We're going to take it over to the sink and we're going to soak it in some water and then fix it. All right, so let's see what our print looks like first. Okay, so I'm just going to pull the back out like this, and let's have the grand reveal on the print here. Oh yeah, look at that. So you can see it's quite a beautiful little print. Now, I had a little bit of a spill over here in the edges and that kind of thing because I didn't mask as well when I was brushing it on. Now, I like to be very clear and I like to be very precise with these, and so that's why I get a little bit anal about it, you know. But normally people just brush over. You have black borders, that kind of thing. But I just kind of like to go this way. Now you can see from the image that it's kind of got a pinkiness to it, and also I did have that little blotch there of paper. It wasn't paper that came off. It was actually a piece of dust that must have been in there when I put it in. So be very careful to keep everything clean when you're putting it into the print frame. In other words, do as I say, not as I do. So we've got quite a nice little print here, and I'm really pleased with it. I wish you could see it in person. And again, if you're interested in one, look at the link below. You know, they're not cheap, but it's not a lot of money, just because it takes me quite a bit of time to put them all together, as you can see. You know, we have to dry these up, package them out, that kind of thing. Anyway, got a really nice little print here. We're going to take it over and we're going to rinse it off in the trays and the sink, and we're going to put it into the fixer. And come on over there with me. So we come over here and we are going to take our print and we're just going to slide it down into the water bath and rock it back and forth. Now you can see a little bit of the cloudiness coming up off the paper right now. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it's there. And I'll let it build up a little bit before I dump the tray and then refill it. But so far so good. Now, in the process, that this is often where you can get into some trouble, or you'll notice where you've had water drops on your paper, or you've done something, because you'll start to see some modeling, or you'll start to see imperfections come out of the print. Usually, if you're at this point and you haven't seen anything yet, you've done a good job coating, that kind of thing. Once again, though, practice makes perfect, and it takes quite a while before you start getting really nice, even prints without any problems or scuffs in them. You've got to be really careful when you're coating them and really careful when you're handling them. So we'll refill it here and rinse it some more. Now in this other tray, I have a 10% solution of sodium thiosulfate, just common photographic fixer. And what we're going to do after a couple of more rinses of this is slide it on over into that fixing bath. Wow, this is really a nice little print, if I do say so myself. Now I can still see a bit of cloudiness coming up in the solution, so I'm still rinsing unused silver nitrate out of the image area. And you're not going to hurt anything by leaving it in the water bath for a little bit longer, so it's best to just make sure that you've got it nicely rinsed. Now when I dump it out, I can still see that there's a little bit of cloudiness to it. Boy, it's very nice. Once again, the exposure scale in this process is really long, and they're quite beautiful. The prints really are quite beautiful, and they tend to be not as contrasty and black and white as a normal silver gelatin print or even as a palladium print, but as an acquired taste, They're very, very, very beautiful. And once again, if you tone them, which will come up in subsequent videos, if you tone them, they can even change colors, and you know, like if you gold tone them, they get a little bit, you know, it's hard to say, but they get a little bit goldish. And if you palladium tone them, they come out very much like this. Okay, I'm seeing less clouding in the rinse water now, so I'm getting pretty close to being ready to flip it over into the fixer. So the water's looking pretty clear, and I'm now going to take that out and I'm going to drop it over here into the fix. Now, one thing that you will notice when you put it in the fix is that the image itself will start to lighten a little bit. Now, not to worry, because as it's lightening, it will also darken again when it dries. There we go. Okay, we're going to leave it in the fix there for about 5 minutes or so, and then I will be back to wash it. Okay. Now we've had the print in the fixer for about 15 minutes now, and I'm going to take it out of there and let it drain off, and we're going to put it back in the rinse water, and we're going to rinse it and wash it for about another 15 minutes or so. Now you can see how the print is lighter than it was when we first went in there, and it's also shifted color from kind of a pinkish over to more of an orange. Now it will change again as it dries. It'll get darker and it'll lose a little bit of that color, but at the same time it will retain a little bit of it, and it'll be quite nice. There we go. So I'm just going to let the water drain in there for about 15 minutes, and we'll be back to hang it up to dry. Okay, so we've given it our good wash time. And we've got our print here. As you can see, it's a little bit lighter than before, but we're going to hang it up on the line to dry. And when it's done, I'll show you what it looks like, and we'll wrap this up. Well, there you have it. It's a beautiful little salt print. It's all dry now, ready to go. I'll have to put it, have to do a little bit of spotting with it to take care of where I had that little bit of debris inside of the contact printing frame. But I'll be able to make that go away completely. And you know, this is a good finished print. What I'll also do is in a subsequent video, I'll show you how to spot these prints. As a matter of fact, I'll show you a video on spotting all of the alternative process that we work on. It's very easy, and it's a very easy way to take dust specks out, that kind of thing, so that it transforms your print into a nice feeling of 3 dimensions rather than a 2-dimensional piece of paper with a bunch of dust spots on it. But anyway, we've made our first salt print together, and I finally got to this. I'm sorry again that I haven't been doing anything lately. I'll be getting to more videos pretty soon. Forgive my absence. One of the things that I'd like to tell you is that I still have some upcoming trips. If you'd like to join me on some trips, look at the links below. Go to billschwab.com. You can see in my workshops and tours. I have Iceland coming up and Faroe Islands coming up in September and October. I also have a trip to Svalbard that's almost full. That's going to be happening just at about a month's time. So there's still a couple spaces there. I know it's kind of short notice for something like that. But have a look there. If you like this video, how about giving me a thumbs up? How about also maybe subscribing or telling a friend about it? I'm really happy that a lot of people are subscribing, and I've been getting some really great letters from people and notice through the email and also through my Patreon about how much it's been helping people, the different videos that I've been doing. So I'm really pleased about that, and I'm really glad that you've been writing. Keep on writing. Keep giving me those nice comments, and stick around for the next one, all right? Thanks very much, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.